Okay, we're here now. Can you hear me now? Oh, I can't hear you now. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
All right. So that was that feature, that intro would be a lot more useful if we could still talk to each other while it was
You know,
like, I don't mind it doing that and giving me a little time to like check things and make sure that the stream is actually streaming and all that kind of stuff. But I see we are at least on YouTube. Twitch has been weird lately, so I don't know if I've actually streamed on Twitch successfully in like a month. But we haven't had anybody actually paying attention to us on Twitch anyway, so whatever. YouTube's where it's at, yo.
anymore. Yeah.
Seeing if I reload the. Yeah, it's still not showing in the stream manager on Twitch. It's not showing us doing anything. So
I think I've seen that most people who still do streaming will use Twitch for their dedicated fan base. They'll use Patreon to just have people pay them to do it. They'll do YouTube as a concurrent stream, and then some people even go so far as to stream on Twitter. And so they do all of those things at the same time so that they can catch as many people as possible, but it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah. It does seem like a lot of work. Trying to see other. I like the service I'm using. In theory, allows me to stream everywhere simultaneously. Like we could be in a dozen different places at once if we really wanted to, but I'm pretty happy with just having one spot where people can hang out.
Totally.
So, and I like that there's a. I was just trying to find it, and there's a chat feature where I can open up the chat and see all of the chats from all of the streams in one spot. So,
oh wow, that if we had a bigger, wider audience, that would be disorienting, I think.
I would imagine. I mean, you can switch it for and pick which channel you want to see the chat from and jump back and forth. But at least then I can see if there's anybody posting anything wherever. So I wore my D&D shirt tonight. You like that?
Oh, nice. I love that.
Uh-huh. Every now and then I wear it to campus and think, oh, I shouldn't. So
that's hilarious.
Yep. Well, should we get started?
Let's do.
We're doing a little bit of an early start today, but it's just the two of us, so I think that'll work out fine.
Yes.
Welcome to Behind the DM Screen. We are two DMs talking about our games and helping each other out instead of the usual three. It is August 2026. I am Jeff Greiner, and I am here with, I'm going to say, one of our regular hosts, Ismael Alvarez, who is on as much as the other two, I think. So
I'm catching up.
Yeah. These days it's usually you, me, and one of the other two. And I think this is the second time we've done just the two of us.
Yes.
So I knew Mike was likely to be busy because he's got a Kickstarter wrapping up like right now. And then Sam had something come up. So it's just the two of us today. So welcome back. Welcome back to Behind the DM Screen. Welcome back to the Tome Show. Welcome back to the United States. You were before the recording, you were telling me about your relaxing journeys to Mexico.
Yeah, I spent about 2 weeks in Mexico City, which was really nice. I think it's really the first formal vacation I've taken in like 20 years of my career, and it was a lot of fun. So,
do I remember that this was going to be a trip with your new bride?
That is correct. Although the unfortunate part, we are very willing to get married, but Mexican bureaucracy kept us from doing it. So we're still working.
You didn't actually pull the trigger.
No, and trust me, we tried. We went to so many bureaucratic offices, but long story.
Okay. Here's the thing. I just realized that I stopped. I forgot to hit record because we're on the street because we're on the stream, which is fine. Except then I went and looked, and I'm in. hour 8 of an 8 hour long recording that I don't think I started because I don't think I've been on this computer since yesterday. So, um, so yeah, I'm going to stop that instead of trying to sort through an exorbitantly long recording. And just do the intro again real quick.
That works.
Okay. Welcome to Behind the DM Screen. It is August 2026. We are two DMs talking about our games and help each other out. We are short, both Sam and Mike. So I am Jeff Greiner, and I am here with our regular substitute, who's on as much as anybody, Ismail Alvarez. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back.
So we've been talking about vacations in Mexico and weddings that we're still waiting to have happen and all kinds of things. But people aren't here, I guess, to hear about that. They're here to hear about our games. So
This is true. Absolutely.
I decided that I usually do a rotation of who talks when, and I don't know who you're subbing for. So I decided to let you go first.
Absolutely, that works. So I do have a lot to talk about, although I have many fewer games to talk about compared to other times. So I believe the last time I was on, I did talk about how I went from, I don't know, probably like a good 5 to 6 games to now I'm essentially down to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'll talk about some potential upcoming changes. So we'll go through the days of the week, although it won't be as lengthy as usual. So Sundays, I just got done with a Daggerheart campaign as a player,
Mm-hmm.
with the intention of then starting a game of Break as a dungeon master, game master, running the game. If anybody can see this is the Break core book. It's pretty hefty for being like a kind of manga-sized book, but it is, as I've kind of taken to calling them, it is a pastel fantasy, kind of anime fantasy role-playing game in the style of Ryutama or some of the other games. That there's like 2 or 3 other games that I always forget the titles of that have come out recently that are like, hey, if you love Studio Ghibli and Legend of Zelda and all these other things, and this is the game for you. And it's funny because there's like 5 of them now. But
so it's kind of it's not quite cozy fantasy, but it's a little bit more cozy because if you're comparing it to like Zelda, then there's definitely like combat and whatever.
yeah, and so when the Kickstarters come out for those, it's always a little baffling because they say if you like Studio Ghibli and Zelda, and sometimes they'll even say Berserk is an inspiration. I'm like, those are 3 things that don't belong. I think sometimes they just throw names out. But yeah, I would say Break in particular, especially I ran my first session this last Sunday. It is very cozy. There are character types that are not meant for combat at all, and usually they'll have some kind of an ability that's more about being able to cook well or being like a support character and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So this one in particular is a lot more cozy. We did run a combat and it was over pretty quickly, but it's really meant to truncate conflict in a way that feels a lot more like you're not focusing so much on how badass can I be with this giant sword
Right.
that I'm wielding, and more like, how do we do good things as we move through this pastoral setting.
So there is combat, but combat's not the point.
Not really, no.
Like if you look at the rules of D&D and how many rules are dedicated to fighting things, you recognize that combat is a major, at least a major, if not the major point of D&D. But that is not the case with Break.
No, and you can make a character that's made for combat. I think there's like the Battle Princess, the Murder Princess. There's a couple of other characters that kind of fit into that category, and they are good at being in combat. But as an idea, it's a little bit similar to Savage Worlds in that you essentially have between 3 and 4 hit points. Sometimes you can have as much as 6, but every time you hit, you don't roll for random damage. You just deal 1 damage. But if you're really good at combat, you might deal 2. You get the combats done that much more quickly. But the intention is you're probably going to start with combat and end within a round or 2, almost certainly, unless it's meant to be this big grand melee. The the experience point system I really looked into at the end of the session, because I was like, oh, we'll do milestone. And then I thought, well, let me look at this experience point system. And there were entries there that, like, okay, you give 1 experience point if you beat someone up and it was for a righteous cause. You give 2 experience points if you went to a community and left it better than the way you found it. You get 3 experience points if you, like, basically if you found out that the treasure was the friends that you made along the way. A lot of the experiences, I mean, I'm kind of making that last one up, but not really. But a
Yeah.
lot of the experiences meant to be more like, what did we learn? What was, um, what was the warm and fuzzy feeling that you got out of it? Not like, did you kill 18 goblins?
Nice. It's I don't know if you've looked into it or played it, but there's a 5e adaptation called something like Obojima.
Yes, and
That's a similar style, I think.
I've been curious about that. That came out about the time that I was kind of on the waning side of being interested in 5e. I
Hmm.
have like 3 or 4 Kickstarters for 5e that I bought. I bought the Kickstarter, I got the book, and by the time I got them, I'm like, I'm not even running 5e anymore. I don't know how many people's experience that lines up with, but that might have been one. I think I was this close to kickstarting it, but I'm curious to pick up the book and see, does it alter the style of play of 5e enough to
Hmm.
maybe justify trying to get people on board with it. But that's a problem for future me.
I can tell you this that it's compatible to a point that I oftentimes am searching like the D&D Beyond database for a magic item that's a little bit quirky or whatever, because I like to give fun items that aren't necessarily always the most useful items, or
Yeah.
at least not on their face.
Hmm.
And like I was recently, just today, I was looking for like fishing based magic items, and 90% of them were just random things from Obojima. So,
See, that that's got me excited then, because I don't run any more 5e games, but I play in them.
yeah,
And I think I'd be inclined to tell my dungeon master, it's like, hey, can I have this cool magic item? It won't let me kill things super well, so you don't have to worry
right.
about it making the game like not fun for you, but it does make the game fun for me not killing
Right.
things. So that sounds
Yeah.
cool. I might have to check that
Yeah.
out.
Almost all of those magic items that I run into are actually tagged with a keyword of whimsy. So they're not supposed to be like effective. They're whimsical magic items.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And I would say that you could tag the entire book for Break as whimsy. Like, it's
Yeah.
very much a whimsy game. Uh, there's some I think there's like some capacity in there for, like, okay, you can go a little bit bleak, you can go a little bit dark, the way that some, Studio Ghibli movies do, because that's definitely a big inspiration. But for the most part, like, the art is all one person, which I'm very impressed with, the art direction and whatnot, before this turns into just a review of the Break book. It's a really cool game, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think I touched on this last time, but I'll give a little bit more of an idea of the sense of the campaign. But
Mhm.
I invented a 10-year war that just ended at the onset of the game, and essentially there was like a big religious figure that died under mysterious circumstances in another country, and that kicked off the war. And at the end of the 10 years war, the country whose religious figure died won the war, and they assigned the group, the player characters, through the story, to bring the casket containing their remains of this religious figure back to the resting place. But there's of course a complication, which is that religious figure, now known as Saint Myrna, not a saint before she died, but was in the middle of a pilgrimage. So they don't just have to bring her home; they have to hit all of the different pilgrimage spots on the way
Mhm.
back.
You have to
And
complete her pilgrimage.
yeah, and the first session was, they went into a town, and I think I changed things midway in the middle of the session, but that my intention was going to be, they go to a town where everyone's starving because they got too many resources taken from them at the end of the war, that they were going to try and steal the saint to get money so that they could feed everybody.
Mhm.
But I thought that might be a little too mean spirited for the first session, so
Mhm.
I just really ramped up the oh, these people are starving and very desperate, and so the players just decided to help. And one of the players is like a essentially a robot chef, and that was helpful because he was out in the middle of like the street basically, uh, cooking a stew because they got denied entry into the inn, and so a bunch of street urchins came up and were begging for food, and that kind of got the ball rolling there. But it went really well. The whole, I gave them like three options for what they could do to alleviate the poverty of the city, and they decided to go fight like a hill-sized boar, and that was the combat. And it went pretty quick, but it was pretty fun for what it was. They you know, it's all pretty abstract where it's the zones. It's like you're either near, far, or very far,
Mhm.
and that worked out pretty well because otherwise it'd be like, my character's short and cannot get up to do anything, and
Mhm.
this at least helped. Like, oh, you just have to move one zone and you're fine. But yeah, other than that, it's all pretty quick, pretty abstract. I've run it one other time before when I had to inherit a game from someone who's like, I don't understand this game. I don't think I can run this anymore. Can you run the rest? And I did. But I really like the break system. It's pretty nice. I'm hoping that it has uh, enough energy to like carry a whole campaign, because I want this to be a pretty long one.
Mhm.
And I anticipate that it is, but I also have a little bit of a concern that it may not have enough meat on the bones to get people to be interested in the mechanics, and so we're just going to be telling a story. But we'll
Okay.
see. Like that'll be the ongoing thing.
It sounds like from what you've sketched out as the plan, like the escorting the body and the finishing the pilgrimage. Like if I'm breaking it down as an anime, that feels like season one. And then at the end of season one, if they decide you want to keep going, then you got to come up with what the next season story is about, right? But
Right.
it also occurred to me not to wear my D&D hat too large. Um, but boy, your story could almost, with a few tweaks, just be put in Eberron,
Yes.
right?
And I didn't think about it until you said it just now, but it has. I think I've unwittingly cannibalized some ideas from stories past, because I was
Mhm.
in the middle of running an Eberron game
Oh,
not
okay.
too long ago, where because the Eberron War was 100 years war, and I was going to run one as the war was starting. Fast forward 50 years right in the middle, and then fast
Oh,
forward
yeah, yeah,
another
yeah.
50 years.
Yeah, I remember
And so
talking about
there
that.
are elements that I'm pulling out of there, and there's a lot
Mhm.
to it there. And I think if I had gotten to that third part, I concluded the first one, but if I had gotten to the third part, there probably would be a lot of similarities to the
Mhm.
war just ended, y'all were a part of it. And that's a lot of Eberron games are like that. You were all buddies in the war, and now you're being asked to do
Mhm.
XYZ.
Well, and even like the war start. You talk describe the war starting with the assassination of an important figure, which rings very true of like World War I, which
Yep.
was part of the basis of Eberron as a
Yeah,
setting. So yeah.
absolutely.
I thought you were going to tell me that there was some great disaster that ended the war, and we could compare it to the morning.
No, I think if the setting were less cozy, I would have done that, but it was
Sure.
more like everybody ran out of energy to fight, was essentially kind of what happened. Like if they had gone a few more years, maybe the people wanting their saint back would have been like, you know what, you can keep her. We'll work this out a different way. We don't want people dying. But it just so happened that the other side was like, we give up. Here's your saint back. We're really sorry.
Mhm.
And I think that there's going to be a lot of the story of them going through, at least the first chunk of the story is them going through the country of the people who the saint died in their country or whatever. They're going to find out what happened. Like, why did this country, who was otherwise peaceful, decide to kick up such a fuss? They could have just given the saint back. And as so many things are, communication breakdowns, and there's people who are like, no, actually, you guys are the bad guys. And
Mhm.
there's no easy answer. There's not going to be like a smoking gun of, oh, there was this one exact moment that caused the war to break out. But it's going to be more like, this is human nature. This is what happens when countries come into conflict as problems happen and cooler heads don't prevail and war breaks out, as we see time and time again. But like, I'm going to really play up. It's almost, as I think about it, it's almost like if I mixed MASH with Lord of the Rings. So it's like this huge journey, but also it's about like dealing with the melancholy of war.
Cool. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. So that's
the I'm not a big anime person, but it's a genre of anime that keeps running into my life. We just read Kiki's Delivery Service.
Yep.
For the book club, so that sort of less combat oriented version of fantasy setting has been in my personal zeitgeist.
Yes.
Recently.
And I mean, true to the way the game is supposed to be played, I think it has room for both these sweeping epics, which I'm like trying to take them all across the world, versus you could have a Kiki's Delivery Service in this game where you just stay in one place and have like all of these adventures in one city, and it's all meant to be like, today the baker is sick and you need to help them like do their job. And the game allows for that too. I'm just taking it like one scope up from that. But so yeah, that's Sundays. Just going through the week. I used to be really busy on Mondays, and I haven't had anything in that slot for a while. Tuesdays, I've just had my second session of the Savage Worlds 1600s Japan game, and that was a lot of fun. The first session, I think, was a little bit tricky. So the premise to that is that we've got a group of mercenaries that were hired by the Iga Ninja Clan to go find a message that was left on a battlefield. And so everybody's superstitious about like, oh, if we go out to a battlefield at night, we're going to run into a bunch of ghosts. They're right, but like, the Iga Clan's like, no, we don't care. Go and get the message for us. But they did the prudent thing and they didn't go and get the message at night. And so they waited in the morning. What they didn't know is that because they didn't go at night, another group went and actually did run into the ghosts, got killed by the ghosts. And that group got kind of turned into something else. And one of that group stayed behind to protect the message because they were under control of something else. So the session we just had a couple of days ago, they got to the battlefield. They ran into the guy who was guarding the message. I called him Masaki the Axe, and he's this like big tall guy with an axe and a scary helmet. And so they had a pretty quick combat with him. They got the message. One of the characters took the axe, and I'm like, that axe is cursed. And they're like, I don't care. And I'm like, cool. just as long as we had that conversation. And so they're dragging the axe. And from that point on, they got the message that they weren't supposed to read. So of course they read it. And the message said, Oda Nobunaga is going to meet with like the Oni King in a few days' time. The message didn't say like in a few days, it said a date, but it's like, oh, that's like tomorrow. And so I basically put it to them that either they could go return this message like they were hired to, or they could go and see what's up with this meeting, but they couldn't do both. At least they couldn't do both in a timely manner. So they opted to go to the meeting place. I have this this kind of like region scheme in Japan where there are essentially like 3 levels of civilization. There's like going to a big city where everything's civilized. Like if you go to Edo or Kyoto, then it's just like normal. Then there's pastoral, which is like the little towns and some wilderness, and you might run into like some ghosts or some monsters. And then there's what I call the border marches, which is like you're in supernatural land, like you're in somewhere that's more supernatural than not. And so they had to go into the border marches into like a Japanese themed goblin market. And I let them kind of play around in the goblin market. One of the characters is a collector of pipes. And so I had him do like a Shrek 4 where he traded one day of his life for like this really cool pipe. And he didn't seem to have any regrets about it, but he will, hopefully.
And pay.
Yeah, so they had a lot of fun kind of like investigating the goblin market and just kind of being goofy. And then finally they saw where the meeting was taking place, and they snuck in and saw that like Oda Nobunaga, who officially died like 2 years earlier, because that it's a little bit canonical but not really to history. And so he's back somehow, not clear. Somehow Oda Nobunaga returned, and is making a deal with the Oni King. And what they learned is that the supernatural world is trying to take over Japan. They're like, we're tired of Japan going to war all the time. We're tired of Japan screwing up, you know, the future of its own like people or whatever. So we know better, and we're going to take over, and the Oni King will be the emperor of Japan. That was more or less where we ended that session. And the next one is they're going to go back to the Iga and say, hey, here's the message. We got it a little bit late. And by the way, we learned that the Oni King is going to try and take over Japan. And so they're going to try and work with the forces of man, if you will, to try and stop the supernatural. But I did give them a choice. Like I was very clear. I said, maybe you don't like the human forces. Maybe you don't like the forces of history and man. Maybe you're like, we want to throw in with the Oni King, or we want to find another supernatural element to ally ourselves and influence it from that side. But they were pretty, I think their characters, even though one of the characters is like a kami or something, like they're all like, no, we want to help the human side. We're definitely going to do that. But it was a lot of fun. We have one player who is on the East Coast, but she came out for a different reason. But she's like, hey, let's do an in-person game. So we were able to do that, and that was a lot of fun.
Nice. Is there we have been talking about games together for
Yes.
some number of years now. I don't remember there ever being such a strong Japan theme to your games across multiple sessions and multiple, different games.
Right.
With you for a while. Like I knew you were an anime fan, but you've got the one anime sort of themed game, and now you've got the historic / supernatural Japan game.
Yeah, I want to say, like, charitably, I went through my Japanophile phase in my 20s, like my early 20s, and I ran a ton of games like that. Did a lot of Rokugan. We had a whole like samurai game where we used ninjas and super spies from the Palladium system. We did a ton of that. So, like, one of my first ever characters was like a samurai, but he was in rifts, and so he like had like a super sword. It was a whole thing. And I kind of went away from that, and I was even a little hesitant to run this game because I had given a menu of options to everybody, and everybody gravitated towards the Japan game. And I kind of talked to people, and I said, hey, I'm going to try and run this as respectfully as possible. Like, I don't want to do anything crazy and make people think like, oh, we're just going through all of these like Japanese stereotypes or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to do some research, which I did. And I'm going to try and make this like not authentic, because there's no way, I'm not a historian, but at least make it feel like it's respectful and kind of true to the historical whatever as much as I can. And so far, like everybody was really good about kind of understanding that. Nobody balked or made like some outrageous like anime character with like a massive sword or anything. And I think I have one character who's like a kabuki theater performer. I have one character who's straight up just a yokai. And then I have a couple of samurais, and I think a Westerner who, you're Shogun style, like, oh, I'm not from Japan, but I'm I'm kind of having fun being here and doing Japanese things. But yeah, people have had a blast with it.
Good.
And I think that through the lens of being away from that for about 20 years of just being so in the Japanese kind of sphere and having some distance from it, kind of felt better. I felt like I'm not just like a fanboy trying to do fanboy Japan things.
Sometimes the things that you were a fanboy of in your youth, you with time and distance and some maturity, you can find the real gems in the thing that you were fanboying about, and turn it into something more meaningful. So I think that's awesome to revisit. That's great.
I don't have a lot more. We've got the Wednesday game, which is Demon the Fallen, using the storyteller system. So it's kind of kin to the vampire, werewolf, mage, and so on from the World of Darkness. And that one's kind of run into a little bit of some scheduling issues. We have some players who have had some job changes, and so we've been kind of missing each other, almost like phone tag style. So like, stay tuned for that one. We haven't had a proper session in a while, and I'm hoping that we either can work that out, or we might just take a respectful break and just say, hey, let's come back when we're all kind of in a better place. But not a lot to report about that one. I have a Friday game that I play in that's 5th edition. That's totally homebrew, and my friend did this, like, he made all the maps and the history and crests for like the noble houses and everything. That one's been fun. I think I mentioned last time that I had to change characters. Did I say that?
I don't remember, maybe.
But I started out as like a noble, like, fighter. I was basically like this kind of nobleman that protected the family's kind of pride by wielding a sword and going out and fighting. What the game master did not tell me is that, like, everybody hates this noble house, and he had included that in everybody else's backstories, so that everyone's like, yeah, we hate your house and we hope you all die, and if your family dies in a fire, we'll throw a party. And I took that for like a few sessions, and after about the second session, I'm like, I didn't sign up for this. I want to change characters. And to his credit, the game master was fine with that. I ended up changing, and I'm super happy with my character now.
That's good. So I've been there before. I remember in my years of forever DMing, I took a break at one point, and one of my players took over DMing and ran Tyranny of Dragons. And I was like, oh, great, I get to be a player. Let's do something really unique. And I decided I was going to try to make a pacifist character, and that was not the game anybody else was trying to play. So it just didn't go well. So I did 2 or 3 sessions with the guy, and then said, never mind, let's do something else.
I've been there before.
Yeah.
It's weird. I think I had a very similar experience with Tyranny of Dragons, not so much with the path that my character was, but just having a few sessions and being like, your play style and my play style don't line up. I'm going to bow out. But yeah, that being said, then Saturdays, I'm also a player in a werewolf, the Apocalypse game, and that's been a lot of fun. We've only played one time so far, but that's been great. I think I've talked about this on this show before, but I had a really hard time being a player. I think I'm finally finding my way and enjoying being not a DM. Maybe it was just a time thing. Maybe it was a maturity thing. I don't know. But I'm actually enjoying being a player finally.
Yeah, I think it would be tricky. Like, sometimes I'll get a chance to be a player, like I just mentioned, right? I'll be between campaigns, and somebody else will decide they're going to run something for a little while or whatever. And if it's like a 1 to 3 shot, like I'm having a blast, right? If it's 5 to 10, then I start to get a little bit itchy because it's time for me to start DMing again. And 2, it's hard for me to get out of DMing mode, right? So I'm in the back of my head constantly like predicting what it is this person running the game is trying to do, and I try to help facilitate it, and then that's not what they're trying to do, and I've predicted poorly, or I'm critiquing, the choices they're making, and I think I know what you're trying to do, but that's not how I would have gotten there, whatever. It's like it's tough when you are a forever DM.
Oh yeah. I think something you said made me realize probably the reason I didn't like being a player before was because I was running a game almost every day of the week. I just needed to tune that down, and then the noise in my head for like, okay, what do I got to plan for next, went away, and I could finally relax and be a player. At least that's a realization I'm having, like, in the moment.
It is interesting that of the 4 games you're currently playing, 2 of them are storyteller system games.
Yeah, and
which prior to recently, I don't think was a game that you were playing at all.
Right, and similar, like, there's so many things from my 20s that are making a comeback. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's the way that life goes, or if that's just my trajectory, but so Rifts is another thing that I, like, jumped headfirst into
Yeah.
as a teenager, and of course did it like in the way that teenagers do, in a very like silly way, and then now coming back to it 20 years later or so, and having a lot of fun. I had concluded some Rift campaigns recently, and I would like to go back to it
Mm.
eventually when an opportunity comes up. In fact, I had a game that I tried to start that just did not, it failed to launch. But yeah, there's all of these kind of echoes of that, because I used to play a ton of Storyteller, like back in the early 2000s, from like 2000 to about 2010, and then
Mhm.
nothing until recently. And so it's been kind of fun going back to those things.
I owned very little Storyteller, and it's got to be back what first or second edition when I
Hmm.
got I think I had Vampire and a couple of Vampire books, and I went to a small gaming convention in well not even in near Des Moines as like a teenager. It was my first gaming convention experience, and there was a silent auction, and I bid for and got an out of print copy of Mage.
Oh wow.
Um, at that point, which I really enjoyed reading. And boy, I'm like, I read it and I was like, if I have to be the storyteller in a game of Mage and adjudicate how magic works, it's so abstract. Like I don't like, as somebody who'd only at that point ever played second edition AD&D, like I just don't know that my head is gonna wrap around that.
I've run into so few people who would be willing to play a game of Mage because of how complex it can get,
Mm.
and even fewer people who would be willing to run it. I have run Mage, I love it, but to find people to I guess understand it is the tricky part. And I think the old
I assume it's been updated over the years and through the editions.
Yeah, when they redid everything, when they ended the World of Darkness, the what I call the old World of Darkness, and then did the
Mm-hmm.
new World of Darkness, and Mage the Ascension, Awakening, the Awakening.
Awakening.
Those rules were so much more clear, and I liked them so much more that I would run Mage the Ascension using Mage the Awakening rules because they
Okay.
made sense. I love both, but yeah, there was a lot more clarity to the latter. And if you're hearing any of the chatter about fifth edition Vampire, sixth edition now Vampire, there's a lot of people talking about like, well, could we just take the best parts of every edition and make a good game? And of course, no one would ever agree on what that is, but that's the conversation going on right now with the recent announcement of sixth edition.
Okay. Sounds like it feels like I've heard similar conversations about is it Shadowrun? There's
Mhm.
some editions of Shadowrun that people really love, and it's not the current edition, but you could
Oh yeah.
take elements of all the editions of Shadowrun and make the definitive edition, you know?
Oh god, I think Shadowrun is a special case where it's like the the edition of Shadowrun that you love is the one that you started playing because it was the one that hurt you the most.
First edition is the first well, really the only Shadowrun I've ever played was first edition when it first came out.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I've heard so many different opinions about which Shadowrun edition is the best to play. I've got fourth because someone that I know that loves Shadowrun says that's the one to go for. So I'm gonna maybe try and run it. I have a couple of people in my life who have been really excited about that and Cyberpunk because of the recent
Okay.
games. But that's a task for another time.
Yeah. I almost picked up there was a Humble Bundle and I forget what edition it was. And I almost picked up a whole bunch of Shadowrun through that and then talked to my gaming group about it and there really wasn't much interest in playing it. So it's like, all right, never mind. Even for charity, I'm not going to buy a bunch of books I won't have time to read when I'm already behind by hundreds of books that I haven't read.
There's been some Kickstarters recently where I'm like, oh, I really want that book, but I can't justify it. Like I
Yeah.
literally am not gonna run that game for a number
Yeah.
of years.
I
And but
backed the I backed the Dungeon Crawler Carl RPG, and I do have at least two big DCC fans, as well as myself in my gaming group. So I think there's some interest, but The other half of the players, may not really give a crap. And are we going to do a whole campaign of it? Does it work well without if you're just doing a one shot? I don't know.
I
I'll
got
wait till the book comes out and see.
I got super into it a little too late because by the time I was like really getting into Dungeon Crawler Carl, the Kickstarter was right at the end and I couldn't justify it to myself. But I think if I was to go back in time, I might have pledged for it. I might pick up the book anyway, but we'll see where.
And I usually just pledge at the PDF level where I get all the PDFs and don't worry about all the expensive physical things, because there were some really expensive tiers for that one. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and people went for them. Like I saw it made like a ridiculous amount of money.
Oh yeah, no, I've got a coworker who introduced me to the book series, who's not as much of a gamer, but she was really like at one point she had backed it at one of the really high levels because she wanted all the like figures and everything, and then ended up withdrawing her pledge because she's like, but I'm not going to play, and it's just so expensive to get a bunch of minis, So.
Something tells me they'll be available afterwards.
Oh,
I think it'll be popular enough. You'll see them at Walmart or something.
Yeah, probably.
So that's it for like my weekly breakdown of what I'm running. So I'm running 2 games, I'm playing in 2 games, and I've got one that's kind of got some scheduling issues that I'm running. But there's the Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign that I run for a group of former students. And that one we haven't played in months, and so I'm kind of waiting to see when their schedules open up. This is not new. Like we've sometimes we'll take like months-long breaks, and I'm just waiting for their lives to align, because when you're in college, and I know this from being a dad and whatnot, like your priorities are all over the place, and eventually you'll go back to maybe some of your old hobbies. But there was also a group of coworkers that were threatening to want to run or to play D&D. So they bugged me about it, and I ran a one shot, and they had a lot of fun, but then it was crickets for a while. Finally, one of them came up and was like, hey, some stuff's happened, or just kind of like not going to do it. And it's like, we appreciate that you ran the game, but maybe it'll line up some other time. So that's fine. And then I had an old friend who had asked me to run a game back during COVID. So it was one of those times that I went from like 9 games to 10 games because they offered to pay. And so they came back and they're like, hey, we just want to be able to run a really short game and we'll pay you. And I said, that was back when I had like 10 games. Like, I'm not going to charge you for that. And so we're still working out the details, but I'm thinking it's going to be like a 3 to 4 shot of D&D. They apparently bought some kind of module and they were going to run it, and they had no idea what to do. And they were like, well, could you do it for us? And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally fine with that.
Nice.
And that's more or less it for me, unless you had any questions about any of the other.
So two storyteller, 2 World of Darkness games, and 2 Japan games. So.
Yes. Back to my 20s.
Yeah.
Nice. This is my first.
It really is World of Darkness and Japan with an occasional dip into Rifts.
Right.
Yeah.
This is my version of a midlife crisis, I guess.
I don't think you're old enough to have a midlife crisis. I don't know how old you are, but I get the impression you're younger than I am. So.
I'll be 44 in a week or so.
Okay, so not much younger. I'm 46, about 47 in a couple months. So pretty close. Right on. Well, I suppose we should move on then, since that's the end of your story. I didn't even really start a timer since just the 2 of us. I figured we'd just go until we're bored.
Absolutely.
But I do want to let people know that if you want to support the Tome Show or any of the other shows that we do here on the feed, you can go to patreon.com/the Tome Show, and for as little as $1 a month, join the patrons there and help me pay the bills to keep things going. Similarly, if you want to reach out to us and find any of us, you can find us on the various social medias. I am Squatch, SQUACH, on the various social medias. Ish is Elven Wizard King.
Yes.
Okay. I knew you used to have 2 that were, everything was one of the 2, and I knew you moved everything to one of them, and I just want to make sure I got the right one. So.
Yeah, I think once upon a time I was King Lorathorn, because Lorathorn is the name of the Elven Wizard King, and I thought I better brand better. I need to tighten up the branding if anybody wants to remember. And Elven Wizard King is great.
Yeah. But the best way to talk to either of us or anybody else involved with the show is to head over to the Discord. It's a great little community there that stays pretty active, but not so big and overwhelming that you can't keep up with the conversation, which is nice. Although we had a hefty conversation about the nature of liches and Greyhawk yesterday.
Yes.
So anyway, that's all of that. It's time for me to talk about my stuff going on. So I am still playing Spelljammer Light of Xerxes, the published campaign for 5th edition. I was intrigued by it. It seemed interesting. And I know that the 5th edition Spelljammer kind of got a lot of flack for not feeling Spelljammery enough. But honestly, I feel like it's working really well. I don't know that I understand do you have really complex simulationist spaceship battles? No, but that's not what D&D is supposed to be for, right? It's simulation-y enough, and I don't want to go back to a version of D&D that's more simulation-y because 3rd edition got lost in the slog of trying to be a simulation, at least at times.
Oh yeah.
And the campaign that they published with it is intended to be very pulpy. Like they list examples like go watch the movie Flash Gordon as to set the mood for what the story is about. And so every chapter, so the book is the story is set up into 4 parts. Each part is 3 chapters. You level up at the end of each part, and each chapter is intended to be enough to cover 1 session and ends in a cliffhanger. And I can see all of the elements of like classic pulp storytelling, the Mars stories with John Carter and all that, or Flash Gordon and all those kinds of things, right? It starts with, oh no, your world is being destroyed, and you manage to hitch a ride off the planet with a Spelljammer. You end up with the Rock of Brawl. You get a little bit of an urban space fantasy story, and the Empire shows up. There's a little bit of Star Wars. The Empire is the big bad. There's this elven empire of Xerxes, thus the title. And so you're constantly sort of running away from the Empire while also fomenting rebellion, and you're going to take down the Empire. And so at one point it's like, oh, you found a guy who wants to help you take down the Empire and save your world, but he doesn't know how to get to the place you need to go to. So you're going to go find one of his friends who lives in a remote tower on an asteroid out in the middle of nowhere, covered in seagulls and auto gnome assistants or whatever. And you get attacked by a space shark, and then you have to go off and find another ally, which is a vampire pirate, who used to date the wizard that you found at the tower, and then there's a mutiny on his ship, and so you help him get revenge and destroy his own ship, and then you escaped through the astral sea to a whole other system called Doom Space, and Doom Space, which is where my players are now. They're just about to start the voyage to Doom Space, and in Doom Space is called Doom Space because it is a space system that hundreds of thousands of years ago, its sun was destroyed in a battle between the gods and the primordials, and I enjoy that. It used to be like this system used to be surrounded by a crystal sphere that was destroyed in the fight. And I'm like, oh, that's a nice little nod to 2nd edition Spelljammer, wherein all of the systems were a crystal sphere. And now it's destroyed. And so there are no more crystal spheres, right? And the sun has been blotted out, and it's a big black hole, and it's slowly, over thousands of years, pulling all of the planets into it. And there's a merchant, a not so... let's say he lives entirely in the Shades of Grey, merchant, but he doesn't like the Empire, and you can kind of convince him to help you form an alliance to go up against the Empire, and then you sneak your way and you find like the thing, and the whole campaign ends with the destruction of their star that they keep destroying planets to sort of refuel their star. So it kind of has that Death Star moment of you blow up the bad guys and destroy the Empire forever in one big massive explosion. So I've just gotten to the part where my last session they they got revenge on the mutineers. They basically, the Admiral Garganhale, the vampire captain, has joined their crew. They are on a living ship called the Second Wind, because of course everything's got to be a D&D reference to former editions or whatever. Right, and of course, a living ship is a relatively rare ship, but useful for something like this, because then you don't have to worry about silly things like, do you have enough fresh air? Because it's a living ship, it is literally grown by a treant that lives on the ship and replenishes the air supply constantly.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and the treant doesn't give a crap about any of this stuff. Like, he doesn't care about the short-term issues of humans. But it's his ship, and he hangs out and does the things. Every now and then, this is the ship that has a ballista. Like, the primary ship weapons seem to be ballista or mangonels. The living ship doesn't have a mangonel; it just has a treant that throws big rocks.
Beautiful.
Yeah, no, yeah. So it started with them, Commodore Crux, the GIF, who wants to take on the Empire, and it's his ship, and his first mate, the Hadozi, which are like flying monkey people. The Hadozi first mate, Flinch. And so it started off with just this small little crew, like, wow, we barely have enough to actually run the ship. And then slowly they added the wizard Topola from the tower, and now the vampire captain, and the secret weapon that the vampire captain Garganhale had on his ship that they recovered before they blew up the ship, was actually a prisoner that he had in the brig, and they pulled the prisoner out. And at the very end of the last session, she wakes up from her injuries and declares, what the hell's going on here? You have no right to hold me. I am Princess Adeli of the Xerixian Empire. So yeah, the larger plot of the Xerixian Empire is that Emperor Zavin is dying, and so they have a succession crisis because the heirs are twins. So Emperor Zavin has Prince, I forget his name now, and Princess Adeli, and they're twins. And his succession plan was that they would rule together, but the brother has sort of manipulated things to take over, and he's the cruel, sadistic one, and she's the cold calculator. It's like, she's also not a good person, but she's willing to ally with the party to take on her brother and kill him so she can be in charge. And of course she's claiming she can save their planet if they help her, but she won't. Because in fact, the only way to save their planet is to destroy the Empire by destroying their son.
Yes.
And there's an interesting, like, as written, the way they save the day is they take one of the royal rings, which are just like, both of the twins have a ring of shooting stars, which is like their royal ring. And you use the font, the astral font in their palace, and send the ring to the heart of the star, and it destroys the star. I decided that's not iconic enough, and so I've added all these little custom character pieces to the story. Every character has their own little custom thing. We have a GIF monk, and this player always names his characters after classic rock band performers or whatever. So the GIF monk, in his backstory, had missed out on an opportunity to join a crew and go searching for the legendary Stratocaster, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've talked about this before, but
you did. I love it, though.
So yeah, there's this spirit that was in the Stratocaster that when it broke, and the spirit bound with him, and the spirit, it was actually a member, like an elf in the Xerixian Empire, who rebelled against the royalty, and was killed for it, and her spirit was then trapped in this instrument. But so every now and then he's getting these memories of the prince and the princess, and how one's worse than the other, but they're not. Neither one of them is good, and because this person was there, and then they fomented this rebellion because the empire had become sort of arrogant and whatever. And so that's one piece, and through that connection, I'm changing the way that they're able to do things. So in the campaign as written, like there's this entity called the Zodar, which is basically a god construct that can cast wish and do all kinds of crazy things, right? And so as written, it's supposed to like it uses this wish and fixes some things or whatever at some point. No, I'm going to let him use the spirit to connect with the Zodar. So he's crucial to that piece. I've got the awakened goldfish in a robot body character named Gulp. And she's an artificer and has been looking for her mentor who went off searching for what's going on with the strange Xerixian spelljamming helms. I modified them to tease the next campaign, which is Vecna Eve of Ruin. So it turned out that the Xerixian Empire has figured out a way to modify spelljamming helms to fly their ships and jump into spelljamming speed in unison, like together in formation, which is a big advantage. Because normally, if one spelljamming ship gets anywhere close to another one, it exit, or next to anything large, it leaves spelljamming speed and everything goes back to normal speed or whatever. It's how you can have random encounters while moving at 100 million miles an hour or whatever.
Oh wow!
Is that you ran into an asteroid belt and bad things came out from behind the asteroids and that kind of thing. But the Xerixians have figured out how to move in formation, so they can jump together, whereas everybody else has to be like miles apart to jump. But that was a secret that was given to them by Vecna, and Vecna is using the modification, and he's actually stealing and siphoning every time they jump. He siphons a little bit of the energy from their helm to help power his, godly ambitions, which is really just an Easter egg for the next campaign. Because I've subtly, sometimes not so subtly, snuck a little Vecna-ish stuff into all of my recent campaigns. And so Gulp has been following this parasitic signal that we're calling it, and is going to be able at the end use that to force all the Xerixian ships to jump away simultaneously. So she'll be able to have her like personalized connection to her mentor thing, and then she's got a clockwork, we call it the Clockwork Corvid, that it was a gift from her mentor that occasionally plays recordings from him and is helping her find him and all that kind of stuff. And so she's going to have that special moment. One character is from a player who has long wanted to have a hellhound pet, but that doesn't tend to work out because hellhounds are evil and they don't care about you. So for this time I got him a little like small little bigger than a motorcycle 2-person spelljamming ship, like a little skiff, and it's got a hellhound bound to it that is the power source. And so he kind of has his hellhound pet, and I've decided at the end they're not going to just be able to throw the ring into the astral font to get the ring into the center. He's going to have to pilot it into the center of the star, and the skiff was originally designed by an ancient civilization to do just that, which is why they bound an infernal creature, because it would be immune to the fires of a star. But he's going to also realize when he does that, then the sun's going to explode. I don't think I can survive a supernova. So he's going to have to make this final sacrifice, except another character will secretly have developed a new maneuver. So I gave him a book called The Gambler's Guide to Wild Space. He's a paladin of Timora, the goddess of luck. Mm-hmm. So he's got this whole gambling motif going on. And so he's going to, and the way I played that book is that he's got a list of three, it'll soon be 4. And then at the end of the campaign, it'll be 5 different maneuvers he can do. And he can pick one per day. And they're just mostly little things. He takes 1 point of damage and allows somebody just to heal a hit die worth of hit points, or, little stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But this one, I'm going to allow him to do a thing. And the maneuver is going to be called something like Know When to Fold 'Em, because I'm going with the gambling motif, and he'll discover this maneuver where he can actually teleport the other character from the skiff back onto the ship, but he has to make it switch places with the book, so he can save his friend, but he destroys the book that he's been cherishing the whole time in the process. So one character is a Thri-kreen, and I built this whole story of he was. He said that his name means like the ninth star or ninth moon, and it was a reference to the moon Selûne, and how it's broken into like 9 big chunks or whatever. And so I created this whole story about how his people originally lived on one of the asteroids around the Forgotten Realms in Selûne, the moon. And then it was the Xerixians developing this energy draining ability that and they were experimenting on his people, and so they fled to where he's actually from now, but he was kind of pulled back, and he's developed this supernatural sense. He can see things. His eyes go black and turn into, and have fields of stars, and the moon of Selûne with its broken asteroids flying across his eyes, and he can see things in space that nobody else can see. And so he's going to be able to use that to see the path that the guy on the skiff has to take to get into the star successfully to destroy it. And so it all kind of comes together at the end, the finale. I'm hoping, it's D&D, so and it's not entirely on rails, so I'm not going to dictate exactly how it's going to go, but it's all going to sort of. But I like to start campaigns with a concept, and then the second thing I do is figure out how it's going to end. So I have a target to kind of aim for, and then no matter what they do, I can kind of keep some internal consistency about where this is going.
So I know that you've talked before about that kind of grand finale where they end up doing kind of like the Death Star thing. Now, have people started putting those pieces together, or are they not even there yet, where they know that they have all of these disparate things that will intersect?
So I think I played Spelljammer Academy, which was like a prelude adventure before this campaign. But in terms of the actual Light of Xerxes campaign, we have just finished part 2 out of 4 parts. So we're at the halfway point.
Okay.
So part 1, they were getting their sort of custom things. Part 2, they were starting to figure out what they were. So now I'm in the part where I've already planned out some stuff for the next session, where they're going to start figuring out, like, oh, where did this astral skiff? It's called the Ember Hound. Where did the Ember Hound come from? And who is the spirit of this elf that's attached to you, and all of those kinds of things. We're going to slowly start discovering those things. And I don't want to like put all the pieces together for that finale until probably part 4.
Makes sense.
When they're they're in the big fight at the end. So yeah, so I plotted it out decently well. But yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at. The next session, I spent considerable time figuring out, like, so there is a 21 journey through the Astral Sea before they get to Doom Space. And there's basically like 2 or 3 things that happen in that 21-day journey. It's like, well, that's pretty low key. Like, you don't get to know the NPCs too well that way. It leaves out a bunch of NPCs. Like, there's basically, you can go fishing with the wizard, astral fishing with the wizard. You can go play dice with the pirate, and you can go console the Commodore who owns the ship, because he's all despondent because all of this is bringing back bad memories or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's not much to do for 21 days of travel. So I came up with a system where everybody's going to start the 21 days of travel with, tell me an arc, a story, a task, something that your character wants to do if they had several weeks of downtime. And then every week I'm going to say, okay, here's what's going on with all of the NPCs on the ship. I want you to tell me who, if anybody, you want to interact with in those 2 weeks. Like, do you want to go play dice with the pirate? Do you want to go deal with that thing going on? Whatever. Like, they're all going to have something going on. Who do you want to go interact with? As many, you got a week, so you can do as many of them as you want. And what are you doing during that week to tell the story of the arc you told me about? So and then we're just going to go through week by week. Week 1, what do you do? Week 2, what do you do? And that's going to end up being most of the next session, which is, I guess, tomorrow. And then they arrive in Doom Space. They learn a little bit about what's going on and how there's no sun, but there's a black hole, and they're going to get a broadcast secret message from the Goldfish's mentor through the Corvid and whatever. And then they end up on a moon. There's a moon where Commodore Crux is looking for an old compatriot of his that came to this system to raise an alliance to go up against the Empire. Turned out that he has been completely unsuccessful and has raised 0 allies. But he knows a place where you can go to find some allies. So that's what they do next. But they find him on this moon, and this moon is an utter wasteland with impossibly high stone pillars. And at the top of these pillars that might be like a mile across, there's like jungles on top. But down in the wasteland below the pillars, Tarrasques stomp through the moon. And they're going to rescue him from one of these pillars, these jungle pillars, where he's being chased by Araturks, which are a spelljammer creature, which is, if you know DC Comics, it's a little bit Starro, but plants. So they're plant people in the shape of starfish.
Okay, yeah.
And so he's being chased by them after having failed to recruit them into his alliance, just like he's failed to recruit everybody else, because mostly people that are in this system are mostly just worried about hoarding whatever resources they can and not working together because they're all trying to survive a doomed system. So that's how that'll end. And then the end of the session is, okay, you fought off the Araturks and you're about to climb the ladder back up to the ship, and oh no, what's that rumbling under the ground? And then you're worried it's going to be Tarrasques, because you know that there's Tarrasques stomping around down there, and it's a couple of Boulets that fly, come bursting out of the ground, and that's where the session ends. So, but in the meantime, I've also been like pretty deeply thinking about not even my next campaign. I've started to do a lot of lore building for my campaign 2 campaigns from now, and it's all Brandis Stoddard's fault. Brandis and I were talking, I think, on it must have been on a Monster Manual episode. But he was talking about a campaign he's in, because I've talked about this on the Discord. I've got a campaign idea to explain the obelisks that WotC never actually got around to bothering explaining. And it was going to tie into the creator races of the Forgotten Realms, because that's something I've always wanted to play around with and never really had a chance. It was going to tie into Spellweavers, because that's a group of people that I've been interested in for a long time and never got a chance to play with. And then he pointed out, Mind Flayers canonically are kind of the opposite of the Spellweavers. And suddenly my campaign came into a different focus, and I've been developing all this lore. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Spellweavers. So they look like, for people who don't know, they look kind of like stereotypical Greys in terms of aliens, but they have extra arms. But the lore of the Spellweavers is that they're actually from a previous reality. And that reality was destroyed, and the Spellweavers managed to survive the destruction of their reality. And they have this, they really don't care about you and what you're up to, because their ultimate goal is to bring back their own reality. The Illithids, and I didn't realize this until talking to Brandis, and then I started doing some digging and found all kinds of information about it. The story, are you familiar with the origin story of the Illithids?
I am not. It
blew my mind. Okay, so Illithids apparently in some edition, at some book, in some canon somewhere, I don't know where Brandis found this. Illithids actually come from the far future. Okay. And they've come, and they had some grand empire at some point in the far future, and they've come back in time to reestablish or establish their empire in the past again, right? And that's sort of where Illithids come from. And so then I'm like, oh, that turns into an interesting story, because now I have multiple factions in my campaign, and one of them is from the past, jumping into this reality, wanting to bring the past back. One of them is the Illithids coming from the future, going back into the present to bring their future into fruition. And then I've added all this extra lore in that, like, Illithids in my campaign are not from the Far Realm. They are the sentient species of our current, D&D reality, but from the far future, where the Far Realm has so thoroughly leaked into reality that it has warped them and corrupted them. And in fairness, it's probably as much their fault as anybody, because they keep using psionics that comes from the Far Realm. They keep tapping into the power of the Far Realm in order to fight the Far Realm. And so by going into the past, if anything, they're making the situation worse. right? They're making the leaks between the far realm and reality more porous and more of a problem. And so you got this large, and then the obelisks are tied into all of this, because the obelisks are how the spell weavers are going to, they're going to control the obelisk in order to reset reality, and that's they use basically the obelisks as life rafts. That's how they survived going from one reality to another. And I built all this lore that the obelisks are a thing that actually exists from reality to reality to reality, and that reality goes on these cycles that are eons long, that eventually lead to the gods destroying reality. And then it all reboots. Because of entropy, things eventually get so bad that AO and whatever over gods are with or over AO decide that we have to reset reality. It's time to reboot things. And the obelisks are the mechanism by which reality is rebooted. And so they're more or less eternal. And that the far realm is actually the first reality ever created that wasn't recycled, and entropy took over and it turned into the far realm. And that's when AO and the overgods figured out, oh, we need to not let that happen again. That went poorly. And now it's starting to leak into this reality. And so there's this whole, and then by the end of it, it's not like, and then there's a big fight and you got to beat the big bad guy. You get to the end and there's all these factions trying to get to the end that are going to determine the fate of reality. Whoever gets to the end gets to shape what reality is going to be. Keep the status quo, change it some way, whatever. And then I figured that'll be a really good conclusion to my shared universe campaigns that I've been doing for, at that point, it'll probably be about 10 years. And then it'll be time like, okay, great. That wraps up all those loose ends. Now I can start telling some stories in like my homebrew setting that I've been building as well.
Yes.
And it'll all make sense because like we just rebooted reality. So it makes sense to now go to a different place and do a different thing. And it doesn't have to carry about any of the baggage of the other stuff. So Brandis really brought this into focus, wherein the creator races are a backdrop of the story, not the focus of it like it was originally. And instead it's this fight over the nature of reality and who gets to decide what reality is.
That's fantastic. And I love, because, I think that we tend to think like one or two campaigns ahead. We're always just thinking like, okay, what's next? What's over the horizon?
Especially because I'm always thinking of like, I'm doing it all in a shared universe. So I'm always trying to put in Easter eggs and hints about what's coming up.
Yes. And that's it, right? Like you want to be able to, I guess, do a call forward at that point. It's not even a call back. And you want to plant those seeds of being like, okay, we're talking about this now, but hey, guess what? Like this is going to be important later, but I'm not telling you that. You're going to have to figure that out. I think I've had like a couple of villains that I really, I started them off in one campaign as being like kind of, not being prominent and maybe just kind of being in the background. And I've mentioned them once or two times, and then putting them in the next campaign, and then people being like, wait, that was the guy.
Yeah.
And doing things like that. And when I can play it forward that way, it's always fun. And it sounds like you're really setting yourself up for the next two campaigns, which I don't think I've ever gone quite that far, so I'm impressed with your level.
Well, and I did the first time I ever really did that was my first campaign with this group since I moved to Indiana. And we were running Dragon Heist and then Curse of Strahd, and then I cobbled together a third act with bringing in some stuff from other campaigns and making it my own homebrew stuff. And one of those things was like the big threat was the dark powers from Ravenloft came to the world, and they had all chosen champions all over the world that now you had to go deal with. And one of them was a devil, and they, because of the nature of what the dark powers did to that devil, you couldn't kill him. Like he just was not killable, but you could bind him. And so they got a shield that was from a celestial that they could bind him into. And they did. And that shield became what is it? The Shield of the Hidden One or whatever from Descent into Avernus.
Yes.
And so in that campaign, they found that shield, and one of the characters ran around with it, talking to that devil that they themselves trapped in the previous campaign through the entire rest of the campaign. And then eventually at the end, they freed him, and he's the one that took over Avernus when Zerial was killed. So right now in our campaign, the devil that they trapped and then freed is now ruling Avernus. So.
And did they ever figure it out, or were they just running around?
Oh yeah, no, they knew. No, they knew. They knew that was the guy that they trapped. There's an NPC that joins them for a while, Rhea Mantlemorn, in Descent into Avernus. And I decided that Rhea Mantlemorn was actually the name that Irena took when she came to the realms after escaping Barovia, because she is now wearing the mantle of mourning, so she's Rhea, not instead of Irena, Mantlemorn. So
excellent.
Yeah, no, it went so well there and now I think like my players expect it a little bit. so like I pulled those things and their minds are not nearly as blown, but I still enjoy doing it.
Yes.
And sometimes it's fun, like when they struck a bargain with the vampire in the last session of my Spelljammer campaign. They struck this bargain with him. They formed an alliance with him, and that's when his crew mutinied and stole his ship and ran away. But before he ran away, he's like, well, let's go over to my ship and celebrate our new alliance. I got a rare vintage of Champagne de la Stampe, which is in the book is written, but is also specifically one of the 3 types of wine named in Curse of Strahd that they make in Barovia. And so I threw in, this, let's go celebrate with a bottle of my rare Champagne de la Stampe. I picked it up at this one world I visited recently. I don't suggest going. I got stuck there for some time until some heroes came along and kind of opened up the whole world and let me finally escape, which is a reference to them having played through Curse of Strahd, right? So you get to go back a little bit sometimes too and have fun with that. So no, it was a good time. In fact, honestly, that moment of figuring out what that 2 campaigns from now is going to be, like I liken it to my universe being sort of the MCU, and this is my end game, right?
Yeah.
The Vecna Eve of Ruin is my Infinity War, and then end game is my I'm calling the campaign The Past Comes Calling.
Oh, I love it.
And I think I'm thinking about that campaign, The Past Comes Calling, so much that I'm neglecting the next campaign, which is Eve of Ruin, except that was already published, so I don't have as much to do. I just modify what's already there, but that's okay.
Hopefully it'll motivate you to use next campaign as filler. It's like, okay, how am I going to use this campaign to make the next one even cooler?
Right. but then I like, what am I guess that last one, the Past Comes Calling is almost entirely homebrew at that point. So that'll be what takes up my time instead of finding all these other new things to do, because I can't really predict what the future is going to be, because they're going to get the chance theoretically to reshape reality into what they want it to be. So anyway, so that's I didn't necessarily anticipate talking so much about my campaign that is probably 2-3 years away from happening, but it's been occupying a lot of my brain space this summer. So
no, that's fantastic.
So I think that's we've talked for over an hour, so I think that's going to be the end of this episode.
That works.
Yeah. If people want to get a hold of the show, you can email thetomeshow@gmail.com. We've mentioned before, you can find Ish on the various social medias as Elven Wizard King and me as Squatch. But mostly you should come hang out with us over on the Tome Show's Discord.
Agreed.
And if you need a link to get to that, you can always email me. You can also become a patron over at patreon.com/thetomeshow, where I one of the first things I always do for patrons who aren't already on the Discord is I send them a link and say, hey, you should come hang out with us on the Discord too. And sometimes they do. No pressure, but it's a cool place to hang out. So anyway, that's where we're at. And I want to thank you for joining me today, Ish. So we're done for tonight. Say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye, guys.
And that's where I'll stop the recording, and then I will stop the stream. Say goodbye to the stream.
Bye, stream.
And when I stop the stream, it's going to kick us out too. So
okay. All right.